Okay, this is the second of three videos. We're stepping on uh, from the first video. In the first video, we actually had a look at cutting up a basic home page that had a background, and we put some slices on it, and then we exported out each of the sliced areas. We gave it names, and then we went and had a look at them. Now in this video we're actually going to go and do an inside page of the website, and we're going to start talking about what each different file format is and why it's better than another file format in certain areas. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look, well, I'm just going to hide all the layers first, and we don't need any of these guides anymore, so I'm actually going to go and get rid of them. So I'm just going to go to View and clear guides, and I'm also going to go to my different slices. I'm going to select them and press Delete. I'm just doing this with the Slice Select tool. Great, now we've got a totally clean area. I'm just going to go back to the Move tool. That's that one that's just up here. Okay, so now I'm just going to go and have a look at a page inside the website. So I'm going to turn my header on. I'm going to turn my background on. I'm also going to turn on my content background. Yep, so now we've got a nice area here that we can put some information over the top of. If I open up my content group, I can then go down and I'll have a look at the services page. Looks like, no, the contact page was also selected. Now, what we can do is we can actually then use this page as a way of starting to break down our interfaces and actually export out the different sections that need to be exported. But we don't have to export out everything, and that's the big thing with layout, exporting layouts. Let's just have a look at this design. Now, for example, these buttons up the top here, Services, Portfolio, In the Press and Contact. If these aren't going to be just plain text and they are going to be a graphic, yes, you would go and slice them and cut them up and have them as graphics. We already have done that as part of the last video, where we actually went and cut them up because they went on the home page. So we can just use those exact same graphics when we build these pages, and we can just use them up the top here. Now, looking at this design, for example, this text down in the content area, all that should not be exported as a graphic. That should all just be plain text. These graphics here, though, if we want to use these exactly the size they are, and we want to export them out exactly these parts of the images as well, we would slice these up. This graphic here, if we again wanted exactly the way it is, we would then export this, and also this heading, and also this logo up the top here. But the good thing is some of these graphics, like for example this logo, that would just be reused again on each internal page. On top of that, you would also probably want to, this section at the back here, that orange block, it's a block of orange. So you can just get that color and just make a block of that color inside whatever package, whether it be PowerPoint or whether it be in HTML. You can just export that out as a solid block of color. You could just make that as a solid block of color. You don't need to export it. But let's start getting hold of all our graphics. Now, one graphic we haven't exported yet is the background. So let's start right from the very back and come forward and export out these graphics. So I'm just going to turn off all my layers and just leave on the background. Now, this is the background that we have, but what I've got is I've got another layer which is some black, and I've got a 43% opacity over the top of it just to darken that image down a bit. So as you can see, it's darkened it, and that's the way I actually want the back to be on all my pages. So I'm going to leave those two layers turned on. I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to choose again that Save for Web and Devices, this function here. And as I said in the last video, it's always good to keep this video here, this picture here, because that way it will enable you to see the original as opposed to the optimized version. Now, take note of these sections down here. This is really important. This is one of the main parts of this video. This is a pardon me. This is a PNG 8. Now, PNGs are only really good for graphics that have strong blocks of color, colors that are edge to edge, no blending, no gradients, nothing like that. This picture is full of them. Gradients, that is. As you can see here, all the different color browns and that going in and out of each other. So PNG 8 is definitely not the way to go. PNG 24. PNG 24 looks the part, and it looks absolutely fantastic. The problem is the file size. The file size is 774 kilobytes. Now, if you're putting this in a background of a PowerPoint, for example, 774 kilobytes is okay. That's not really a problem. So if you're putting them in the back of a PowerPoint, then you could use this graphic as a PNG 24, because that will keep a great amount of equality with very little a decent file size. If you're going for web though, I wouldn't go for PNG 24. I would try JPEG. Now, in your graphics, you may not see it as well in this presentation because the presentation has been compressed a bit. But if we were to have if you were to look at a graphic like this, I've currently got, I'm going to up it to about 50%. And what you actually see is an almost perfect copy. Now, the other graphic was 770 kilobytes as a PNG 8. PNG 24. This is 55.8. So it's a fraction of what the other graphic was. So what we can do though is we can just move this around by grabbing and dragging, and this still all looks pretty good, and you can see it looks pretty good compared to the original. And so I'm looking to myself, thinking to myself, I think that's pretty good. So what we can do is we can then click the save, and at 50%, by the way, if you want to just check that out, you can always make it a bit larger if you think that your quality is not the same, or if you visually can see some difference. Just play around with that quality, but keep an eye on the file size. For a background graphic in a web page, you probably want to keep it under 100 kilobytes if you can. If you have to go above 100, please just don't go above 200, because that's getting a little bit ridiculous. So keep that at 95K, I think that's perfectly fine. Or if we dropped it down to 50, which I thought looked okay. I've got 49, but that's close enough. There we go, 50, 55K, that's fine. I click save. Now, because we're only saving out the single graphic, we do then need to put in an image name. So we can then go and put that in. Now on the desktop, I have that as Serene Spaces, and in my images, I'm just going to call this body_background. Okay, because it's the main body of the document, and it's going to form the background graphic. And we click save. Good, that's done. Now, we then go up a level, and we think to ourselves, okay, we've got the main background graphic here, and by the way, this background graphic you'd also use on your splash page. But now we want to go up a level, because we want to have this bar. So there's two different ways that you can do this. You could either save this out as a graphic with the background and the foreground, but what I usually like to do is I like to try and preserve as much flexibility as possible. So if the person wanted to change the background graphic, we want to just have this blend over the top of it, including with that transparency. So what I like to do is I just like to grab that white bar on its own. And I also want to grab it so that we can move it up or down if they decide they want to change the layout a bit. So we grab our slice tool, and we're just going to grab some rulers and drag them down, and remember to leave some space for the gradient. You can see it drops off about here, but I'm going to bring it up a little bit so we've got some good space, just to make sure that nothing will change. Great, once we've got those rulers, and we're going to actually cut it from here all the way down to here. So we can then hide these two layers, and we've got to name our layer. So we go to get our slice select, so remember that was the slice select tool. Oops, there we go. Slice select, and we give this a name, and I'm going to call this content underscore background. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, did I actually do that right? Hold on. I forgot to put a slice. My bad. Go to my slice tool, click and drag a box around this. Sorry if I caused any confusion then. Great. Now I've done that, I can go to my slice select tool, double click and give it a name. Now I'm going to call this content underscore background. Okay, so I'm just doing it around that box. I don't need to save out this because it's transparent, and it just means that we can position this box anywhere we want. Okay, so then we go to File, Save for Web and Devices again. Now because we've defined slices on there, and this will be a great way of seeing how you can work with slices, you can see that this is the whole composition. This is the original. This is the whole composition. We only want to save out this section. So we click it once. It's surrounded with those brown lines. We go over to our presets and we change this to PNG24. Now we're using PNG24 again because PNG24 holds transparency. It holds transparency beautifully so that you've got literally 100 different levels of transparency. And it will also hold the transparency in this block of white. So you will see some of that graphic coming through this white, so it gives that nice layering effect. Once we've got PNG24, we make sure we've got transparency selected and we click Save. And then we don't worry about that name, remember, in the last video, because it uses the slice name and the extension or type of graphic. So it should come out as background underscore content.png. So just ignore that, just click and make sure I've got this folder and save. Great. Let's just go and have a look to make sure that all our graphics are coming out. I've got it in my Serene Spaces folder. There it is. In my images, there we go. There's my content background. Can't see it. Let's just double click it. Let's see if that actually shows it to me in preview. There it is. You can see it's supporting it now and showing you the gradient fades up the top and the bottom. And we also have our body background as well. So there's our graphics. Okay, let's put that away. And let's go and open up our Photoshop file again. Great. So we've got all our background areas. We've got our main background, we've got our content background. Now, let's go and start cutting up our header. So let's get rid of this slice. So we select it and delete. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually cut out this graphic up the top here, and we're going to not worry about the navigation because we've already got them. If you didn't get them and you're just starting with this video, jump back and watch the first video and just fast forward through to when we actually slice up these so that you've got the instruction on how to do that. But I'm just going to slice this logo up. So I'm going to zoom in, so I'm just going to hit Command plus on the Mac or Control plus on the PC, and I'm just going to go right up to this area here, and I'm going to use this guide that's already there. So I'm going to get my move tool and I'm going to bring this up a little bit on me, and I'm going to go and grab some more guides. You try and do it as tight as possible. You can always readjust these guides, by the way. Just because you drop them in one place doesn't, you can always remove them. They're not locked unless you choose to lock them. So here we go. We've gone and used our guides. Now guides are fantastic, as I explained in the last video, because you can define exactly where you want this slice to be, so that when you go and choose your slice tool, you just need to get near that point and it'll automatically lock it to your guides. It'll snap it nice and clean on the guide. Now I'm just going to have a look to make sure there's nothing else that I wanted to put in here. Let's see, we've got this graphic here. So let's just see if there's anything else we can slice up. So we're just going to show all of our other layers. Okay, yeah, let's grab this graphic, this graphic, this graphic. We'll also grab the text for the heading area as well. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 graphics. And this graphic here. So let's go and do them. So we zoom in again, and we'll start over with this graphic. So we go and grab our slice tool. And normally, I mean, as I've been doing in the past, you can use the slice tool. You can see I accidentally went a little bit over, so I'm going to correct that with this slice. So I've got the header. Now, you can either do it this way, but I actually prefer to do it this way. So I should have done it the first time instead of confusing people. I prefer to try and keep it as clean as possible. So I only export the pieces I need. You might decide that it's tidier to just cut up the whole block of black. If you did, then you can do that in your design. So I've got that heading. I now want to also grab this graphic. So, and as I said before, you can do it by setting up your guides if you want, or you can just zoom in and do it as I've just done it like this. So I've got the whole graphic. I move over. I also grab these little graphics. And as you can see, I'm doing all the slicing at once. I think as you can see, the slice wasn't right, so I can re-go in and put that slice in. Yeah, this bottom graphic actually should have been a little bit wider, so I'm just going to, I'll just cut it to the size of the graphic, but it would have been good if I would have actually had it to the right size. But anyway, I can correct that later. So now I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I've put slices around this, 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 and this. So, slice select tool, because now we're going to give them names. So I click on this top section here, and get rid of the name it's putting there. And I'm just going to call this header underscore logo, because it's in the header section of our page. And I'm just going to call this one heading underscore services. Oops. This one I am just going to call, and this is on the services page, so I'm going to call this services underscore Hang on, let's see. I think this one was going to be interior 1. Then this one here was going to be services underscore colors, and this one was going to be services underscore decor. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. Did I do this one? No. Services underscore large left pick. Done. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fantastic. We've actually got 6 graphics, so we're going to export. And this will be a really good one because some of these are going to be saved out differently. Now this one at the top here, I want to save it out with transparency, which means that I have to get rid of this background, as you can see, because I want this to sit over the top of whatever graphic is placed in behind it. We're making it more flexible, better design. Now this one in the background here, it's got black in the back, but what happens if the user decided that they wanted to make that a different color? So this one should probably be exported out with a transparent background. And these 3 here, they're just square, so they don't have to worry about transparency or anything like that because it's going to be a hard flush edge. So let's go and get rid of this black behind the heading background. Now you'll notice that this has the graphic in the back. So what this tells me is possibly we're going to have to do this one after. We'll actually go and get out all the other images, and then we'll come back and do this one so that we can hide this graphic. So we'll just do this one, and this one, this bottom graphic, these 3, and then we'll come back and we'll do this one after we've finished. So we go File, Save for Web. Now, over here, we're going to click on this top one, and we want this one, so we're individually going to choose the settings for each of these. So we click on the top one, and we say that we want it to be, because we want the transparency, a PNG 24, and there you go. So that's going to now be exported out as a PNG 24. These 3 graphics here, these have got fairly good solid blocks of color. Not solid blocks of color. These have got a lot of gradient. This one doesn't have gradient, but it's got tons of colors in there. So we might have a problem saving that out as a PNG, but we'll check. And this bottom one also is gradient based. So this one would be a JPEG because JPEG works best with gradients and fades. And this one would be good as a JPEG as well. So this one and this one, I select both of them by holding down the Shift command. So that way I can edit them both at the same time, or you could do them individually. And I'm just going to put that up to about, say, 65, which is always a good place to start when you're working with photography or gradients. And I can't see the difference. 65, and they're 8 kilobytes, so that's fantastic. Now let's go to this one. Now as a JPEG, it looks pretty good, but you can start to see it's getting a bit fuzzy, and we don't really want to lose that that hard edges, because I think that's what adds the impact. So I'm going to try a PNG 8. Now the PNG 8 looks okay, but I'm starting to see, you can see all the colors over here, it's starting to look really grainy. So it's 2.2 kilobytes, but I want to see what it looks like as a PNG 24. Now, PNG 24 has gone up to 11 kilobytes, but I kind of think that's okay, even though it's a small graphic, because you want to hold on to the solid blocks. But hold on, PNG. Why would I be using PNG for this? Because PNG, while it holds on to transparency, it also can deal with fades, but it also deals with solid blocks of color as well. It's one of those all-in-one, but the problem is that because it's so good at doing everything, sometimes you get a larger file size. So in those situations where you've got lots of colors, you've got strong edges, sometimes you have to go for a PNG 24 even though the file size is larger. It's one of those sacrifices that you make for quality. So this one we do as PNG. Now we don't need transparency on that one, and it won't really matter anyway, but I'm just going to untick it anyway. So we've got JPEG, PNG, and JPEG. This one up here, PNG 24. This one we're not going to worry about at the moment. And this one, we want to have that as a JPEG. So again, I'm going to put that up to 65 just to see how it looks. And I think that looks great. Now you can always, if you want, click on that 4 up. You'll see the 4 up just up the top here. If you want to, you can always have a look at 4 different versions of the graphic, because you might say, okay, I want to see what this bottom graphic looks like at a couple of different levels. I mean, this JPEG being, for example, 65. What if I want to make this one a bit smaller? So you can click on it, and you can drop that to say 50% to see what that looks like and compare them. Maybe this one will make 40%. And these are all JPEGs. So we have a look here, and it's incredible just how these look so similar. The 40 actually looks pretty decent, but you start to notice it starts to look a little bit dull in some parts, but it's still looking fairly good. And you notice the file sizes, there's only 4 kilobytes file size between the 40 and the 50 kilobytes, and there's 9 kilobytes between these two. If in the case of these graphics, probably go for something around mid-range. I'd probably go for something about here, this one here. So I just click that one, and say that, I mean, with that one, so this one here is 50%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this graphic, which is the one where we're actually working on, and I'm going to go back to 2 up now that we've worked out what we want. So we'll click this, and we'll go to the 50%. Great. So we'll just make sure. Great. Fantastic. So we've got those main graphics. Now we want to select them all. The ones we want to export, we're not going to do this one yet. So we click, hold down Shift, select, 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 and select. You see now the color's nice and rich, and we click Save. Now remember I said just click the one you want to put it in. It'll automatically create the images folder. You can turn that off, by the way, the images folder. Cancel, I forgot. Got to also say, select those, save, selected slices. I didn't realize it wasn't going to save the settings from last time. So with only selected slices, and we go save. Okay. Now let's go and have a look to make sure those graphics have arrived safely. So we go into the Serene Spaces folder. Now you notice because I did not click that selected spaces, it's gone and cut up all the other parts of the graphic and has created these other graphics there, and they're all called Serene Space Slicing Example. So if this does happen, you just get rid of the ones that start with that name that you called the file, move those to the trash or delete them. And now let's have a look. We should have our, where is our graphics? It's going to create an images folder in the images folder. So let's just go and drag them all out and put them in our main folder and delete that folder. That was my problem. So let's have a look. We have our content background already sitting in there, and I'm just looking for there we are, services. There's the decor. There's the interior one, or I could have just called it interior. Services, large left pick. So they're all there. Now we should also have the header logo. There it is up there. You can barely see that. That's just sitting there nicely, but that's all been nicely cropped just to have the logo on its own. And there we go. So let's go back in now and grab that other top one. We want to just grab that image, grab this heading. So let's get rid of these slices. We don't want them now. We can get rid of all of those. And this is the one that we want. So we have to turn off this background behind it because we want to save it, and now we want to have it transparent. So let's get rid of this one as well. Perfect. So now it's transparent behind it. So now we can go File, Save for Web, click on the area, and we go and change that to PNG24 like we've done before, and there we go. So when we now click Save, we choose, don't choose the images folder here, choose here, because it automatically will create the images folder, but because that's already there, it should just put our image in there. So we click Save, and there we go, because we already gave that a name prior, and that should be heading underscore services, which is now sitting there. There we go. So that's how to cut the page up. And the great thing is that because we've gone and done it nice and cleanly and we've used our groups and layers, if I was to go, for example, and I'm just going to hide the services, and I'm going to go down to the, say, in the press page. And oops, no, he didn't do in the press, let's do portfolio. And I'm going to turn these layers back on. Now, we've already got these graphics. We've already got that header logo now because we've already done that. The only thing that I can really see that we need to export out, because we don't want to export the text out, we only really need to export these graphics here and this top heading graphic there. Now, it's still got the slice sitting there, so I could always just use that slice because I can always just select it and just drag that out, and I'd probably zoom in just to get that spot on. Oops, just need that a little bit more. It's snapping, which can be good but bad at the same time. So that's pretty good, and I can just double click to change the name. Heading portfolio, and then I can export that graphic. Save for web. And the good thing is it usually will remember the settings that you attach to that graphic. So then I can just go, oh, actually, hold on. Let me just realized I've got to get rid of all these backgrounds. And let's just collapse that. Open up our portfolio and hide what's behind it. There we go. File, save for web and devices. Click, save. Only the selected slices, and then we click save, so that when I come back and have a look at the folder, there we are, heading underscore portfolio. And we would then just use the exact same technique to go and cut up those other graphics that we have in here. We would just draw slices around these sections here. You can use guides if you want initially, and you would just go and cut them up. This black box in the bottom, that would just be put in whatever package. If it was the web, you would just put in a div, and you would just put a background color of black, and the text would just be white. That would not be a graphic itself. And you would then just go and put this in as an image. If you're having a look at this image, lots of gradient, so that would definitely be a JPEG. I might actually just cut one up just so we can see. So I'm just going to go and grab my slice tool. And as I said, you can go and slice this up perfectly by using rulers, or you can just go and trace it out as I have. Double click, give it a name. So I'm going to call this service underscore pick 1. File, save for web and devices, click, and then we just go, oops, hold on, make sure first. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's a pretty good size, so I click save. I didn't realize it had already made it a JPEG, which was great. Yep, click here, selected slices, save. Let's go and make sure it arrived safely. Service, pick one, and there you go. Everything's nicely laid out, ready to go for you to put straight into your presentation or your web page. So there we go. That's part 2, just to show you how that you can export out all your graphics through using groups and your layers. And just by turning them off and on, you could actually get to every part of your design. Groups and layers are so very important when you're using any graphics package that supports them. I definitely recommend spending your time naming your layers, putting them in order, because it's going to make it so much better in the long run and it will create a better workflow. There you go.